The rain had been falling all afternoon in Portland, a steady November drizzle that blurred headlights and turned the airport parking lot into a mirror of gray. Inside the terminal, travelers hurried with coats pulled tight, their voices echoing against tiled floors. It was November 24th, 1971, the eve of Thanksgiving, and the Northwest Orient Airlines counter was busy with families, businessmen, and students heading home. Among them stood a man in a dark suit. His tie was narrow, his shoes polished, and his briefcase rested neatly at his side. He looked like any other passenger, ordinary enough to be invisible. He gave his name as Dan Cooper, paid cash for a one-way ticket to Seattle, and accepted his boarding pass with a polite nod. The clerk barely noticed him. There was nothing remarkable in his face, nothing to suggest that history was about to bend. Onboard Flight 305, the Boeing 727 hummed with the usual chatter. A mother soothed her child, a businessman unfolded the evening paper, and a college student leaned against the window, headphones pressed to his ears. Cooper took seat 18C, near the rear, and ordered a bourbon and soda. He sipped it slowly, eyes steady, as the engines roared and the plane lifted into the gray sky. At cruising altitude, Cooper folded his newspaper and turned to the nearest flight attendant, Florence Schaffner. His voice was calm, almost apologetic. "Miss," he said, handing her a folded slip of paper, "you'd better read this." She opened it, expecting a phone number or a casual flirtation. Instead, the words froze her breath. "I have a bomb in my briefcase. I want $200,000 in cash by 5 p.m. Put it in knapsack. I want 4 parachutes. No funny business, or I'll do the job." Florence looked at him, her pulse racing. Cooper leaned closer, his tone steady. "Ma'am, you better take that to the captain. I'm not joking." She nodded, forcing composure, and walked briskly to the cockpit. Inside, Captain William Scott read the note, exchanged a glance with First Officer Bob Radizak, and picked up the radio. The message to Seattle was clear. They had a hijacker, and he wanted money. Back in his seat, Cooper remained composed. He opened his briefcase, just enough for Florence to glimpse wires and red cylinders. Whether real or not, she could not tell. He closed it again and smiled faintly. "Don't worry," he said. "As long as they do what I ask, no one gets hurt." Passengers around him noticed nothing unusual. He ordered another bourbon, lit a cigarette, and watched the clouds drift past the window. His demeanor was so calm that Florence later recalled he seemed more like a businessman negotiating a contract than a criminal threatening lives. The plane circled Seattle as authorities scrambled. The FBI, local police, and airline officials rushed to gather the ransom. $200,000 in $20 bills was packed into a canvas bag. 4 parachutes were sourced, 2 front, 2 back, at Cooper's insistence. He had specified parachutes from civilian stock, not military, ensuring they were functional. Inside the cabin, Florence returned with updates. "They're preparing the money," she said softly. Cooper nodded. "Good. When we land, the passengers go free. Only the crew stays." She hesitated. "Why 4 parachutes?" He smiled. "So they know I won't force anyone else to jump with me. It keeps them honest." At 5:39 p.m., Flight 305 landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. The passengers disembarked quietly, unaware of the drama unfolding. Cooper sat calmly, briefcase on his lap, as the money and parachutes were delivered. He inspected the cash, checked the parachutes, and gave a single nod. "Thank you," he said. "Now we fly south." The crew remained: Captain Scott, First Officer Radizak, Flight Engineer Harold Anderson, and 2 attendants. Cooper instructed them to head toward Mexico City, but with specific conditions: fly at 10,000 feet, keep speed at 170 knots, landing gear down, flaps at 15 degrees. He wanted the plane slow and low, conditions suitable for a parachute jump. The plane lifted again into the stormy night. Rain lashed the fuselage, winds buffeted the wings. In the cabin, Cooper sat alone, counting the bundles of cash, then carefully stowing them in the briefcase. He tied the parachute straps, adjusted the harness, and moved toward the rear stairway. Florence approached, voice trembling. "Mr. Cooper, are you sure about this?" He looked at her, eyes steady. "I am. You'll be fine. Stay in the cockpit." The crew felt the tension rise. The stairway mechanism groaned as Cooper tested it. The roar of wind filled the cabin, and the temperature dropped sharply. The attendants exchanged glances, realizing they were witnessing something no manual had prepared them for. The Boeing 727 flew low over the forests of Washington, its lights cutting through sheets of rain. In the rear, the stairway yawned open, a dark mouth into the storm. Cooper stood at the threshold, briefcase secure, parachute harness tight, his silhouette framed against the night. He turned once, gave a final nod to the attendant, and then the cabin door slammed shut behind him. The crew felt the sudden shift of air pressure, the shudder of the fuselage. They knew what had happened, but none of them saw it. The man called Dan Cooper had stepped into the storm. The Boeing 727 groaned against the storm. Rain hammered the fuselage, and the wind clawed at the wings. In the rear cabin, the stairway yawned open, a dark mouth into the night. The man in the dark suit stood at the threshold, briefcase strapped, parachute harness tight, his silhouette framed against the storm. Florence Schaffner, pale and trembling, whispered, "Mr. Cooper, you don't have to do this." He turned, eyes steady. "I do. You'll be safe. Stay forward." Then he stepped into the black. The crew felt the sudden rush of air, the violent shudder of the fuselage. Captain Scott glanced at his instruments, jaw tight. "He's gone," he muttered. "God help him." Hours later, the plane descended into Reno, Nevada. The crew, exhausted and shaken, guided the aircraft onto the runway. FBI agents and police swarmed the tarmac, flashlights cutting through the rain. The stairway was lowered again, but there was no man waiting, no briefcase, no parachute. Only the crew emerged, faces drawn. An agent approached Captain Scott. "Where did he jump?" Scott shook his head. "Somewhere over southwestern Washington. We felt the pressure change at 8:13 p.m. That's all we know." The agent scribbled notes, frustration already etched into his features. "We'll need every detail." Every word he said. Florence, clutching her coat, whispered. He was calm, polite. He even ordered another bourbon before the jump. Another attendant added. He smiled, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. Within hours, search teams combed the forests of Washington. Helicopters swept over ridges. Dogs sniffed through underbrush. Agents slogged through mud and rain. They found nothing. No parachute, no body, no trace of Cooper. The wilderness swallowed him whole. In Seattle, FBI headquarters buzzed with urgency. Maps covered walls, marked with flight paths and wind patterns. Agents debated possibilities. He couldn't have survived, one insisted. The terrain, the weather, it was suicide. Another countered he planned this. He asked for 4 parachutes to keep us honest. He knew the aircraft specifications. He knew the speed, the altitude. He was trained. The case became a puzzle, with too many missing pieces. The ransom bills were cataloged, serial numbers recorded, distributed to banks nationwide. Composite sketches of Cooper's face were printed, showing a man with sharp features, dark hair, and an ordinary suit. Posters declared him wanted for air piracy. Reporters swarmed the crew, demanding details. Florence repeated her story. The note, the glimpse of wires in the briefcase, the calm voice. He wasn't angry, she said. He wasn't cruel. He was professional. Captain Scott told investigators he knew aviation. He gave precise instructions. Altitude, speed, flap settings. That wasn't guesswork. The FBI interviewed hundreds of suspects. Ex-paratroopers, pilots, drifters, ex-cons. Each lead unraveled. Some men resembled the sketch. Some had suspicious pasts, but none fit perfectly. Cooper remained a ghost. In a smoky conference room, agents argued late into the night. Agent 1, we're chasing a phantom. He could be dead in the woods. Agent 2, we're sipping bourbon in Mexico. He vanished too cleanly. Agent 3, we'll find him. No one disappears forever. But weeks passed, then months. No trace emerged. The ransom bills never surfaced in circulation. The parachutes were never found. The case grew colder, even as the legend grew hotter. Nearly a decade later, in 1980, a boy digging in the sand along the Columbia River found a bundle of decayed $20 bills. His father reported it, and the FBI confirmed the serial numbers matched the ransom. The discovery electrified the investigation. Agents rushed to the site, combing the riverbank for more. They found nothing else. The bills raised more questions than answers. Had Cooper buried them? Had they washed downstream from a hidden cache? Did they prove he died in the wilderness, or that he lived and discarded part of the loot? The mystery deepened. In bars across America, the story was retold. A man in a suit, polite and calm, had hijacked a plane, taken $200,000, and stepped into the night. He left behind no body, no parachute, no trail, only a handful of bills on a riverbank years later. In FBI offices, Agents stared at the sketch pinned to the wall. The eyes looked back, steady and unreadable. "Where are you, Cooper?" one agent muttered. "Dead in the woods, or laughing at us from somewhere warm?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. The sketch hung on the wall of the FBI office for years. A man with sharp features, dark hair, a business suit. Beneath the drawing, the name D.B. Cooper was scrawled in bold letters. It was not the name he had given. He had called himself Dan Cooper, but a reporter's mistake had stuck, and soon the world knew him only as D.B. Agents stared at the sketch day after day. Some grew old with it. They chased leads across the country, interviewed suspects, checked bank records, traced parachute sales. Each time, the trail went cold. Cooper remained a ghost. In smoky bars and crowded living rooms, people argued about him. He died in the woods, one man insisted. No one could survive that jump in November. Another shook his head. He was a pro. He knew the plane specs, the altitude, the speed. He walked away with the money. A woman leaned forward, eyes bright. Maybe he buried it. Maybe he's living under another name, laughing at us all. The debate became part of the folklore. Cooper was no longer just a hijacker. He was a riddle, a story people told to measure their own beliefs about luck, skill, and fate. The FBI chased hundreds of names. Ex-paratroopers, drifters, pilots, men with criminal records. Some fit the sketch, some had suspicious pasts. None matched perfectly. One suspect, a veteran with parachute training, was interrogated for hours. "I didn't do it," he said, weary, "but I wish I had." Another, a drifter found dead years later, was briefly considered. His family swore he had hinted at secrets, but no proof emerged. Each suspect became a story, but none became Cooper. The case remained unsolved. In 1980, a boy digging in the sand along the Columbia River found a bundle of decayed $20 bills. The FBI confirmed the serial numbers matched the ransom. The discovery electrified the public. Reporters swarmed the site. "Does this prove Cooper died?" they asked. An agent shook his head. "It proves the money was here. Nothing more." The bills raised more questions than answers. Had Cooper buried them? Had they washed downstream from a hidden cache? Did they prove he lived, or that he perished? The mystery deepened. Years later, in a Seattle bar, two men argued over the legend. He was a criminal, one said. He terrified those people. The other laughed. He was polite. He let the passengers go. He didn't hurt anyone. He's a folk hero. The bartender wiped a glass, listening. Hero or not, he vanished. That's what people love. A man who steps out of a plane and disappears. That's a story that never dies. By the 2010s, the FBI had spent decades chasing shadows. In 2016, they officially closed the case. The files were thick, the evidence thin. Cooper had become less a suspect than a symbol. An agent, retiring, looked at the sketch one last time. "We never found him," he said softly. Maybe that's the point. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. In books, films, and songs, Cooper lived on. He was portrayed as clever, daring, reckless, doomed. He became a character more than a man. Children heard the story from parents. A man who hijacked a plane, took $200,000, and vanished into the night. Adults debated whether he survived. Historians wrote essays about the cultural impact. The truth remained absent, but the absence itself became the story. Cooper was the man who disappeared, the man who left behind only questions. Imagine him, still, the stairway open, the storm raging, the man in the dark suit stepping into the night. Did he land safely, brush the mud from his shoes, and walk into a new life? Or did the cold and the forest claim him? No one knows. That is why the story endures. The name D.B. Cooper is not just a case file. It is a legend, a silhouette against a November sky, a reminder that sometimes a man can vanish into myth and leave the world forever wondering. Subscribe for more.